Welcome to the Family Brand Show. We're Chris and Melissa Smith of FamilyBrand.com, husband and wife, parents of 5, and we want to help you take back your family and to live life on your terms.
And we know being a family can feel really overwhelming. Parents tell us they feel like they're being pulled in a million different directions. It's so challenging to navigate the uncertainty and all the chaos that's happening in the world right now.
And that's why we want to bring you every single week actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become a better parent, to become a better spouse, and to build a stronger family. And look, there's never been a better time and a more important time than right now to take back your family. You can define what your family stands for, or the world is going to do it for you. And the world needs strong families now more than ever. And it starts right here with your family. Okay, everyone, welcome to another episode, Family Brand Podcast. Chris and Melissa here. We're super stoked and honored to have Connor Boyack here with us today. Connor, welcome to the Family Brand Podcast, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, so Connor got introduced to me through a really great friend, a mutual friend, Garrett Gunnarsson. Gary's been on the podcast.
Yep.
Yeah, wrote an amazing book about money for kids. He's written a lot of books. He's a New York Times bestselling author, but one of our kids just recently was actually reading his book, I Am Money.
Yep.
Yeah. So Garrett's great friend introduced Connor, and like most Garrett's introductions, he's just like, hey, you two need to talk. You guys do great. You're tough together. That's cool. So Connor has sold 7 million books teaching families about entrepreneurship, markets, freedom, merit. This one's really interesting. I want to ask you about this one later on the podcast. Changed 150 plus laws impacting millions of people. Helped over 100,000 kids get into entrepreneurship, helped 1,000 young adults get jobs without a college degree, making a massive difference, to say the least. He's a founder of a series that most, I would say, families, at least that we know, have heard of, the Tuttle Twins. And so Connor, you're obviously committed to making a difference in the world, and specifically around families, entrepreneurship. What got you started in that? Like, of all the things you could choose to do, which there's a lot, right? Any of us could do. What had you feel like, man, this is my calling. This is what I feel super called to do in the world, is to like speak about, and we'll dive into each of these topics maybe individually, but like at a high level, why families and why entrepreneurship?
Well, it's so funny given where I'm at now. You know, a lot of people like to compare, right? Oh, I could never write. I've written, I think, 50 books, and that's very intimidating to a new author, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all like to compare. We don't like to, but we do compare ourselves to one another. But it's so weird for me to be in this position because I never had a grand vision for any of this. I am not someone who like had a master plan to like build all these programs. It was all very organic in response to the adjacent possible. There's this term that comes from kind of organic evolution, where this guy, I wish I remember the guy who wrote the book, but he talks about how in coral reefs, there is this explosion of genetic diversity because all of these little critters are either mimicking one another or they're developing traits, whatever you think about evolution. It's a fascinating concept about that genetic diversity. And he says that the adjacent possible is when, you're right here and that opens up this constellation of opportunities adjacent to where you're at. And then when you make that next step, it opens up more opportunities adjacent to that, new position that you're in. That's how my journey has been. It's been very organic. I used to be a web developer. I built websites for a living. It was soulless work building websites for products and brands I couldn't care less about. And I wanted to find a way to apply my life energy to something very, purposeful. I ended up in the political world. I started building campaigns for candidates that I wanted to support. That got me into launching a think tank, Libertas Institute, where we've changed all these laws. I found I had a really good knack for communicating, storytelling, writing. I had a blog at the time. This is before I wrote any books. And I loved bringing attention to problems that people were having, writing an op-ed for the local newspaper, things like that. And so just little by little, I was like, oh, hey, I'm kind of good at, marketing. I'm good at storytelling. So maybe I can do some political good here and try and remove these regulations from entrepreneurs because their business is struggling. And then I was doing that for a few years, and that started to lead into Tuttle Twins because I found myself wanting to share with my kids what dad did all day at work, changing these laws. And so it was very just, again, organic. I literally went on Amazon. I'm like, hey, books that teach about, free markets for kids or property rights. And there was nothing in 2013. And so that led to the Tuttle Twins, right? That later led to the kids market. So for me, it's been a very just step-by-step incremental process to see, all right, we're serving these families this way, but what other ways can we serve these families? What's that market demand that's out there? And maybe we can step into it, create a product or solution for them.
That's awesome. And what was the term, adjacent?
The adjacent possible. I really wish I remember the gentleman's name, but I've loved ever since the adjacent possible, because of where I'm at right now, what opportunities exist around me. But then when you decide to go in that new direction or take advantage of that new opportunity, you're often closing those other doors, right? But now you're unlocking the new adjacent possible. Hey, I have a new relationship with Chris and Melissa. What opportunities are going to arise because now we know one another? And then, wow, the good that we do together, what does that unlock down the road? It's fun to think about.
Yeah.
I just want to think about.
One of my favorite words in the world is possibility. And I won't go there because I'll derail the entire episode. But I also think there's just an example for so many of the people that listen to the podcast are entrepreneurs or want to do something entrepreneurial. And it's a demonstration of like, I think sometimes people think like I have to have everything figured out. And I always talk about this idea that you just got to be directionally correct. And even if you're not directionally correct, that's okay, because you'll get directionally correct going in the incorrect, So it's like, so the fact that that's awesome. And I have to say, on a funny kind of side note, our two oldest sons, 18 and 16, have been reading lots of your books. They started with the conspiracy theories book. Just they love it. And it has created some of the most engaging and fun and hilarious conversations at our dinner table at night. Like, they're going to start a podcast now. I don't know if they will, but then every night it's like, okay, this is the conspiracy theory we're going to talk about on this episode. So yeah, it's been awesome. The boys,
I love it.
And the other thing I would add, our first exposure to a Tuttle Twins book was in 2021. We were living in Hawaii, and how old would he have been? He would have been turning 7 at the time. One of his friends gave him 2 Tuttle Twins books for his birthday. And
Nice.
yes, so over in Hawaii, we were receiving your books for a birthday gift.
They're spreading like wildfire. It's so funny for me because like one of the questions I'm often asked on interviews about Tuttle Twins is, these are like complex adult ideas, right? Like how markets work and how money works and how to launch a business and whatever, right? How do you get kids interested in this stuff? And it's bizarre for me because like I don't know if I can encapsulate how I've done what I've done. It just somehow works. Call it providence, call it God, call it stupid luck. But I feel so blessed to hear stories like that, Melissa, where like randomly the books I've written are being shared at a birthday party in Hawaii. It's mind boggling and so fun to think that millions of kids out there are learning these like really powerful, empowering ideas. It's just, it tickles me to no end to hear that.
Well, to that point though, Connor, that's one of the things that Melissa and I realized and we really believe is that I think most adults really underestimate kids.
100%.
Kids want to have like deep conversations about life and possibility and like meaning and purpose and entrepreneurship and money. It's like, I'm not surprised by it anymore, but at first I was surprised that like, oh, our kids like actually are way more open to these bigger conversations and want to have them and want to be in them than I think a lot of people give them credit for. So it's amazing that we're writing on those topics.
The example that I give, Chris, is I think of Thanksgiving dinner when you're like a teenager and you've got all the family around and the adult table only has so many seats, but you're in that awkward position where there's not enough seats for you. So you're at the little kids table, right?
Yeah.
Like you never want to be at the little kids table. Every kid aspires to be at the big kids table or the bigger kids table. And I feel like so much of the educational material on the market meets kids where they're at. It treats them at or below their level rather than challenging them and saying, oh, here's some kind of big kid type of material. And I think that is, if I were to more seriously answer the question, like what's the magic formula behind what we've done? I think you've pinpointed it. It's that I think kids want to and are prepared to be intellectually challenged more than they typically are. It's just often like textbooks and stuff just convey information in a super boring, soul-sucking format. It's just regurgitation and having to memorize stuff. But if you make it in narrative form with story and you make it interesting and relevant to their lives, I know I've seen kids will consume these adult big ideas readily and eagerly because they want to know how the world works. They want to make sense of this world that they're growing up in. And I just think so often the education establishment writ large has just done so poorly and has frankly got these kids disinterested in learning because they've been presenting these ideas and this information in a way that just doesn't click and resonate with them.
Totally. Yeah, it's awesome.
Do you have a favorite Tuttle Twins book?
Do you have a favorite child?
Some days more than other.
I tease. Yeah, I mean, I would say there's kind of two that I bounce between for my favorites. The first is The Creature from Jekyll Island. This was our third children's book that we did. We've since created books for like toddlers and teens, as you point out, but this is like our core children's series. It was our third one, and it's all about the Fed, the Federal Reserve, and money and inflation. And especially in today's world where, costs are going up and especially young adults are struggling, that book is so helpful because when you finally understand what's happening with money, then suddenly you can master the world far better. Like all of the depression and anxiety, and especially in an economic context with people struggling to get jobs and, affording rent and all these things, these kids do not have financial literacy. They do not understand the cards that they've been dealt, right? The deck is stacked against them. And if at least you understand that, you can make plans around it and figure out what to do. But there's just economic illiteracy everywhere that creates this downstream suffering because these kids don't know, these young people don't really know what's going on. And therefore they just assume, well, where's my American dream? If I went to college and got a job, I thought that I'd be able to, buy a house and be okay. So that book, I think, is really powerful for the moment that we're in to like really empower these kids with that information about here's what's happening to the money. And you remember G.I. Joe from the 80s, right? Knowing is half the battle. Like if you understand this stuff, you can make better choices around it. So I'd say that's one. The other one that I often answer is our ninth one, The Tuttle Twins and the Fate of the Future. And this is more of an author favorite, I would say, than an audience favorite. Like we got plenty of kids who like it, but I don't really hear as much that this is my favorite book. But it's mine because I feel like the topic is so foundational. The book really centers around how do we want to create a thriving society? Do we want to create it through coercion, where we have, government control and all these laws and regulations, and we have people creating top-down decisions, one size fits all? Is that the vision for a productive, thriving future that we want? Or do we want a society based more around voluntary relationships and consent, where we have, businesses and the market creating solutions? We have spontaneous order where people aren't being told what products to create and how many to create. Rather, it's just abundance because everyone is creating all these different things. And so I like that because I feel like it's this really important foundational question that we should all grapple with is like, what does our vision of the future look like? You guys have probably read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think it's number 2 or number 3. Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind, right? And then from there, you kind of reverse engineer what you want out of life. And so I like that book because it encourages us to think, what is that end of the type of society we want our kids and grandkids to live in? And then let's get to work figuring out how we can reverse engineer that and try and be part of creating that positive society.
To that end, Connor, what's your end in mind in the sense of what's all this for and driving towards? Meaning, like, are you really politically motivated? Are you involved in politics? Are you trying to change policy? Or is it like, man, I'm just trying to run these businesses that I've started and keep up with, everything I've got going on? Or are they one thing for you?
No, it's a great question. All of our programs operate under a nonprofit umbrella called Libertas Network. And that includes that think tank I mentioned, Libertas Institute, where we do engage in state capitals around the country. And we're passing, education freedom laws and trying to deregulate micro schools and home schools. And we're trying to create competition in the education market. And so, yes, we are engaged in political reform. Do I think that that's where salvation lies? Do I think that that's where we change the culture? No, I think if we're going to save America, it's not in the Capitol. It's not at the courtroom, even though we should engage there. I think we save America at the dinner table, right? This is why what you guys are doing is so important, by creating family culture, by helping parents and kids rebuild social fabric together. Let's talk about how to develop critical thinking. Let's have tantalizing dinner discussions about crazy conspiracies in the past or whatever, right? Let's talk about what's happening in the world today, and let's show our kids how we can be a little skeptical of official narratives and media bias. And like, it's at the dinner table, I feel like, where we can optimize for having true transformational change. Henry David Thoreau has the quote where he says, for every 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil, there's one striking at the root. I look around society and I see all kinds of people hacking away at the branches, and that's fine. Like, there's a lot of evil branches of all kinds of corruption and problems and things to do with, no sweat. But then I wonder, like, where are the root strikers? Where are the people who are really focusing on those core issues? And for me, it is the family, right? All of the social dysfunction and crime and all the problems that we deal with are really just outgrowths of broken homes and families. And so that, to me, is where the true transformation change. It's why I love what you guys are doing. It's why so much of our stuff is family focused, because I think that's where we have true lasting change.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, that is beautiful. And, I've shared the last two presidential elections in our country have been as divisive, I guess you could say, as any that I've ever, maybe there's been more that have been, some that have been more divisive. I don't know, but they've been, yet in all of that, not one time did I hear anyone mention of any real substance, like making changes at the family level, because it's also like that would actually take real work. That would take real collaboration. That would take real commitment. So it's easier to hack away at the branches and make people think like, oh, look at all this good we're doing.
Right.
Love that. It's like, yeah, but until we start hacking away at the root, like it, and we follow that same philosophy. And I don't think it's too far. A lot of people think like, well, isn't that a little bit altruistic or far-fetched? And I go, well, actually, if you think about this, a strong home contributes to a strong street. A strong street contributes to a strong neighborhood. A strong neighborhood creates a strong community. A strong community creates a strong town. A strong town creates a strong city. A strong city creates a strong state. It's like strong state creates a strong nation. Strong nations create a strong world. It's like, no, it's not that far-fetched for me to link, like, if we're going to have a strong world, if we're going to save America, like, it starts with strong homes, strong families. Like, it's not a far stretch at all for me.
I think a lot of parents would nod along with what you're saying. They'd conceptually agree. Like, yeah, I get that. And yeah, I want my kids to, be critical thinkers and understand history and be thriving citizens and so forth. I think conceptually parents would agree. I think the message gets lost in translation because application of that concept is very difficult. And what I mean is that you have well-meaning parents who, like, I'll just use as an avatar, like a Christian conservative mom and dad as an example for what I'm about to say. And that family has no problem taking their kids to Bible study or getting like the illustrated Bible for kids or whatever. For their religious values, parents are often very well equipped to share those types of ideas with their kids. But when it comes to civic ideas, economic ideas, political ideas, these families who still have firm principles and beliefs, just as they do on the religious side, it breaks down very quickly because those well-intentioned parents struggle to talk about these topics, about history, about politics, about money and finance and so forth. Even though conceptually they'll nod with you and say, yeah, we do want a strong family. Yeah, we do want to understand these ideas. Yeah, I want my kids to know. But, and we've surveyed this, like, I'm not just talking out of air. This is a real legitimate problem.
Yeah.
And it boils down to the fact that the parents, their understanding of these topics is often surface level. They are the products of the public, what I like to call the public fool system, right? Which did not really equip them very well or deeply in these ideas. And therefore they feel like as parents, they don't know really how to engage their kids in those ideas. That's honestly like the whole purpose behind Tuttle Twins, is just to say, hey, mom, hey, dad, there's no prerequisites here. You don't have to have a master's in whatever. Just read these fun books as a family. And we have some discussion questions at the end and just talk about it and see where it goes from there. It's very light touch. It's very easy. And it's so great because parents feel far more empowered. Many of these parents already believe these ideas or they share this worldview. They've just struggled to find a way to like convey it to their kids. And then they get worried because the kids are getting all types of counter messaging from society and social media and teachers and textbooks and TikTok. And then the parents freak out that, 5 years later, their kids are totally like different worldview, different whatever. And the parents feel ashamed, like, where did I go wrong? What do I do? And I say, you had good intentions. You just didn't have good execution because you didn't realize like how to actually foster these conversations and give your kids a foundation in the home. So a lot of our work really centers around just supporting parents and saying, here are resources so that you can give your kids a foundation of truth in the home, so that when they go out in the world and they're being challenged with all these different ideas, at least they've got some critical thinking going on where they can evaluate what they're hearing rather than just accepting it whole cloth.
Okay, so this is fascinating to bring this up. So now I want to get your take on something. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, no.
It's been fascinating to me, Connor. So I have a separate, coaching consulting firm, and we specialize in working with financial advisors and wealth management firms. So we have this very unique niche. And Melissa and I, serve a lot of entrepreneurial families. I have had entrepreneurs or business owners hire our coaching consulting firm, pay us tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars for coaching consulting for their business. They'll find out about Family Brand. Like, oh man, that's so awesome. Like he said, like intellectually, like, dude, I want that for my family. And it's almost like getting them to like make a $500 investment in like our digital program that I can get them to spend $50,000 to $100,000 easier to grow their business than sometimes to spend $500 on a digital program to proactively invest in their family.
Mm.
And we see that a lot. And it's almost, I think I have some theories behind it. Like we had someone recently, and Melissa was telling me the story of this guy's had an exit recently, big liquidity event.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'm going to do your digital program, $497. Melissa even gave him a 50% coupon discount. Just like, don't give that guy a 50% discount, And he came back and he was like, my wife and I were talking about it, and we're going to wait a while and revisit this. And we're like, in our minds, we're like, what would be more important than creating your family's values and like what your identity? And like, I guess I'm just curious because I'm sure you've seen this yourself, like in the world of family. Like, why do you think so many families intellectually get it? Like, yeah, I want a strong family. Why do they struggle with application? Why do they struggle to spend money proactively on the building and strengthening of their family? And even when they have it, like sometimes they say, like, I can understand if you just don't have the money, but we're talking a lot of times families who like, they have the resources.
Yeah.
I have some theories and ideas, but and maybe some encouragement to families listening, because I think it is a struggle for families to apply it and actually invest financial dollars into the building and strengthening of their family.
Oh boy, we could go down all kinds of fun rabbit holes here. So I'll try and find the most productive one out of different ideas swirling in my brain. It's an interesting question, timely for me, because I've been consulting with a number of kind of high net worth, ultra high net worth families about, just next gen kind of stuff, how to raise creators, not consumers. How do you, my mom's an estate planning attorney. I've grown up hearing horror stories of how successful business owners have destroyed their kids, and what to do, what not to do. And now with Tuttle Twins and the kids markets and all this learning. So I've been doing a little consulting for some of these families. And what I see is when you reach a certain level of wealth, like money can make most problems go away. You can pay someone, you can hire someone, you can outsource it, you can delegate, you can whatever. And I see a lot of parents, whether they're wealthy or not, who have been conditioned into a delegation position with their own children, right? The school system itself, right? It's really just institutionalized daycare. Like you could do all of the academics in 2 hours. Many families saw that during COVID, right? They're like, why are my kids sitting in a school for 7-8 hours a day when they're done with all their studies in 2 hours? And so I feel like that system has conditioned generations of parents to have this attitude towards their own children of, oh, someone else will take care of that. It's someone else's problem. And so I think that makes it hard just culturally for these adults to realize I need to step into that role. That is my responsibility. Now, your question, though, is interesting to me with a little bit of a twist because, I've watched every episode of Shark Tank. And, Mark Cuban, I think this was his last season, but in all the seasons, he would routinely say that from his vantage point, there are two categories in which people are willing to spend indiscriminate amounts of money. It's their pets and their kids. And so then here I hear you saying where you're having some potential customers that are like, gun shy, do I pull the trigger or not? And then I was reflecting on, well, why is that maybe different with, Tuttle Twins where we haven't seen that as much? And I would venture to guess that it's because our books are kind of like a self-help thing almost for the kids, where like the parents don't actually have to be involved. All they have to do is put the books in front of their kids and the kids start magically learning. And so maybe that helps us get around parents having to be involved and administer the, foster the conversation or whatever. Like it is just a plug and play thing for the kids if that's all you want it to be. Maybe I'm just speculating. Here. But as I think about our consulting with these families I mentioned and with your customers, what I'm trying to think through is like, how do you solve for that? If that passivity where parents just want you to hire you guys to solve their problem, or they want to hire me to solve their problem. That to me is a tougher nut to crack. I don't know how to get the busy entrepreneur who finds so much pride in growing their business to see and develop the same or higher level of pride in growing their children. And I don't know, maybe it's the ROI isn't as tangible and there's not a strict numeric, you don't have a P&L that clearly shows how, maybe that's why report cards exist for kids. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point, but yeah, back over to you.
No, we often joke that it might be 30, 40, 50 years before you know if you got an ROI on your kids, like it's like how did this? But I do think, and I've thought about like, I've kind of referred to it before as the great outsourcing, that what we've been conditioned to do without realizing it is we got sold this idea of, hey, outsource your kids' education to the school system, outsource their spirituality to a church, outsource their sense of belonging to a sports team. You could almost, culturally, it's really easy to just be like, yeah, I'm not the source. And it's like, no. Like families, like you've got to be the source of truth. Like your home is a source of education, spirituality, belonging. Don't get me wrong. Those things can be supplements to the truth, but I do think, and I also just think it's interesting that it's never really existed as an industry. Like if I want to go and proactively invest in my business, I can find infinite amount of resources for anything from marketing to operations to sales to culture to you name it. But if I want to proactively invest in the strengthening of my family, it's almost like the industry doesn't exist. And that's one of the things that I feel like we really want to help with as part of the message is, hey, whether it's with us or somebody else, like it doesn't matter, but it's like, it's actually okay to proactively invest resources, money, time, energy into the strengthening of your family, no differently than you proactively invest into the strengthening of anything else that you want to in your life. But it actually comes more natural for us to proactively invest in the strengthening of our businesses, even our health. And it's almost like, but what about our families? It's like, yeah, I don't even know how to do that. So it's just, that's just always been fascinating to me.
Well, I feel like it just boils down to intentionality. You're very intentional with your business of need. Like the circumstances become very dire very quickly if you are not giving the appropriate amount of attention and energy to your business, right? But you don't see that same feedback loop as much with your kids. As you point out, it might be decades before you see the positives and the negatives. And so for me, it really boils down to how do we invite parents to be as or more intentional with their own children, even though the payoff and the progress is a lot slower. And again, I love that Covey quote, begin with the end in mind. I have a lecture, I give at a lot of homeschool conferences, and there's a slide in it where I list all of the character traits that I want for my children. And it's hilarious because when I put that slide up, the phones go up and everyone starts taking these, pictures of the slide. I'm like, these are my words. Like, you might have the same ones and that's fine, but I just want you to think like, what type of adults do you want your children to become? And parents often, sorry, I said that wrong. Parents rarely bring that level of intentionality to raising their own children. They're just in a reactive game of responding to external stimuli all the time. And very rarely do they sit down absent, courses like yours and other opportunities to like say, hey, let's hit pause. Let's be very intentional here and figure out what type of end result are we going for? Because when you do that, when you start with the end in mind, you start asking really interesting questions. Like if I want my children to be independent-minded, historically literate, entrepreneurial, compassionate problem solvers, just to throw something out there, well, then how should they be educated? What type of mentors should I bring into their life? How do I as a parent need to show up for them and provide them with experiences and opportunities? Maybe we should start a little family business together. What field trips can we go on? What vacations should we go on? What books should we read? And so to me, it just boils down to that intentionality of even just inviting these business owners, these parents to pause and say, look, you decided at some point to have kids. more power to you. We need more parents to be having kids. So let's boost that fertility rate. But then once you decide to have kids, like, let's think about that long game. What type of adults do you want them to be? And then let's reverse engineer their, educational and familial experience to produce those outcomes rather than just being reactive to the external stimuli. Let's, as a family, figure out how to be proactive in bringing about the type of culture and values and worldview that we want to develop in our family.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I love everything that you're sharing. And I want to touch a little bit on, we've talked about entrepreneurs, and I know that a lot of what you do, you have, a market for kids that's like an entrepreneurial market. And then you also have, as you read in your bio, that there's a program that you have for educating adults. I can't remember exactly how Chris read it, but without going to college. Can you talk a little bit about, I know those are two separate things, but maybe why you feel like entrepreneurship is so important, and tell us a little bit about those two programs too.
Yeah. So the going back, Chris, to your curiosity about changing all these laws, one of the laws that we changed in Utah, our home state, my home state, in 2017, it was the first of its kind in the whole country. We call it a lemonade stand law. And it's a law that says if you're a minor operating an occasional business, you do not have to get any kind of license or any kind of permit or pay any kind of sales taxes. And it was a response to all these headlines around the country in friggin' America, the land of lemonade stands, where there were legit little kids' lemonade stands getting shut down because they didn't have like a business permit or they didn't have a food handler's permit. I remember one story. It was this 4-year-old girl named Abigail selling 50-cent cups of lemonade. She gets shut down by the county health department because she didn't pay for an $80 permit. And I'm like, in what world does that make any numerical sense, let alone any like philosophical sense at all? So we passed the law in Utah and we thought, hey, let's do something fun to celebrate. So that was how the Children's Entrepreneur Market Project was born. We operate events kind of like farmers markets, but the kids run the whole show. So like you could bring your kids, you would help them set up the booth, get the product, whatever they want to sell, put out there. And then you, the parents, would be required to sit back the whole time and let your kids run the whole show. And so we have all clustered together, all these kids selling all kinds of stuff. We typically attach them to large events like a city festival or a rodeo or a big farmer's market where there's already a lot of foot traffic so that the kids have a lot of potential customers. So this year, we're now operating in every state. We'll have almost 100,000 kids go through the program this year across the country. We're going to scale that up to about 500,000 kids per year around the country. About next year, I think we'll do about 2,000 of these events across America. And you asked, Melissa, like, why do we do that? There's inherent value in this, right? The kids are learning about money and spreadsheets and marketing and business and customer service and value creation. Like there's inherent value for the kids. But for us, it's a very effective way for parents to share values through this type of experience. Like it's very hands-on, it's real products, it's real money. Like imagine, a lot of your guys' customers, it sounds like, are the entrepreneurial types who, like me, probably struggled in school. You can't sit still and you can't follow orders and you can't, and if you were to sit a kid down and say, all right, ninth graders, open up Google Sheets. We're going to learn about spreadsheets 101, like super boring, right? But if now kids get a little template spreadsheet where they have to fill in the numbers for their own little business, where there's real money, there's a profit motive because they want to get that spending money for their Pokemon cards or whatever, right? Suddenly they're learning way more stuff because it's presented in a way that's helping them fulfill a goal. Their goal is to earn money. It's not to learn spreadsheets. It's not to learn about customer service. Boring. Their goal is to earn money. And because of that, we can wrap around all kinds of information that they learn in pursuit of their goal. It's amazing, like how educational it becomes. So website for that is kidsmarkets.com, where you can look up near you if there's any upcoming markets. The other program is Praxis. So I wrote a book several years ago called Skip College: How to Launch a Career Without Debt, Distractions, or a Degree. And this was actually a book featuring a number of authors. So I edited some chapters from a variety of contributors. One of those contributors, his name was Isaac. He had started this company called Praxis, which we have since acquired. Praxis is basically a 6-month boot camp that trains kids, I say kids, young adults, like age 18 to 25, in sales, marketing, operations, AI, value creation, economics, philosophy, persuasive writing and speaking. So it's this very intense, short boot camp, after which we guarantee them a job. So our burden and challenge is to go create a corporate network of companies who want and need to hire entry-level talent, but they don't want to sift through 200 LinkedIn applications of these kids who are like, I got a 3.8 GPA, please hire me, right? Instead, we can go to those companies and say, hey, we've been spending 6 months, with person A or B or C. We think you would be a really good match, with this person. And so they pay us a little placement fee if they continue to employ them. But if we don't get the Praxis participant a job, we don't get paid. It's $7,500 tuition. And so we only get paid if we get them a job, which means the ROI is insane, because college has zero ROI. There's no guarantee. Well, I mean, it's not zero, but there's no zero guaranteed ROI. And our Praxis participants, it's a $300,000 financial impact, both because you are avoiding 4 years of tuition and fees and all the stuff that goes with it. But then after that 6-month boot camp, you're unlocking 3.5 years of your life where you can earn additional income. So are young people graduating from Praxis, are they concerned about high housing costs? Sure. Are they, were they angry when egg prices a few months ago were through the roof? Yes, we all like to gripe about it. But these kids are debt free. They're saving for a down payment. They're starting families because they feel more financially secure in their future. Like, it's just such a better position for them. So look, I wrote a book called Skip College. It sounds provocative. Do I think everyone should skip college? No, like, college is the right answer for, a lot of people, but it's the wrong answer for a ton of young people out there who have never been presented with like effective alternatives that can actually set them up for success. So that's what Praxis is about.
So cool.
Yeah, very cool. It's amazing, these things you're describing. And it's fun having, as we mentioned, our son is 18 right now. He's in his senior year. So we're having all these fun conversations with him right now, like about the future. And
He just went and did summer sales between his junior and senior year of high school, which we really encouraged, because it was like, dude, you want to talk about hard knocks of like going out
100%.
and working and like at 17. And it's been this funny debate Melissa and I have always had, where she's like, you're going to brainwash all of our kids not to go to college. And I'm like, you're going to brainwash all of our kids to go to college. And so it's always like this, just had a fun, like, and we've kind of landed on like, hey, if the thing you want to pursue, if college is required, yeah, sure.
your mom, who's an attorney, like that.
Great.
Yeah,
For sure.
we're definitely not proponents of go to college just because you have no better options. And it's like, I don't know what I want to do. It's like, well, I can think of a lot more effective ways to help you figure out what it is you feel called to do in life than going to college. And so, yeah, it's for some people and it's not for a lot of people. But then a lot of those kids have never felt like there's any other possibilities for them. So like Praxis sounds amazing. That's awesome.
Well, and if I can tie it back to what we said earlier, I think the word again is intentionality. Like,
Yeah.
Like my mom, right? If you're going to be a lawyer, okay, I got to go get my, political science degree or whatever. And then I'm going to go to law school. Like, you're very intentional and focused about doing that. But if you're just adrift and you don't know what you want to do, as you point out, Chris, like, chances are you're going to be working at Starbucks if you don't have a clear plan about what you're going to use your degree for. In fact, the national statistic in the United States is that only 52% of college graduates are employed in an area or a field pertaining to their degree.
Yeah.
Half. That's a massive gamble.
Wow.
And so again, if you're very intentional and you're like, I'm going to college and hey, look, I'm going to get my associates here and decrease, the cost of community college, and I'm going to go to this university, whatever, like, there's so many ways to do this that are going to be quicker and cheaper and more effective and avoid the brainwashing and all the stuff. My fear, my concern is more just the conveyor belt, where we've just had this expectation that you get your high school diploma, you get your college degree, and then you get a job. And I think that promise, that implied promise in America, is just fundamentally breaking down. And you see so many desperate young people who are saddled with decades of college debt that they're unable to pay down because, they were just told if you get your gender studies degree or whatever, then surely you'll get some like fat cat professorial, job for the rest of your life. And the promise is breaking down and it's leading to all this wreckage, this economic havoc. And so I just want to raise the flag with these families and say, college may be right for you, but let's again just be intentional about making these decisions and review all the alternatives. And I'll end with this. I feel like part of the problem is so many parents don't realize the abundance of alternatives that now exist, whether we're talking to college or even K to 12, like all the micro schools that are out there and the little private schools and the AI stuff and the homeschool co-ops. And so a large part of our work I see is just making parents even aware that like, hey, the way things were done even a decade ago, let alone 30 years ago when you were this age, like you need to kind of pay attention to some of these new ways and opportunities of doing things because there's so many choices for you and your kids to pursue.
I do think so much of what you're talking about is like I think the number one challenge that most families face today is the cultural pressure that's existed for generations around what families should do. You should send your kid to public school and that's the only option. You should go to this church and that's the only option. You should go to college and that's the only option. And so I think more and more families are starting to break free from the shoulds and like, well, hey, well, what's possible for our family? Like, what do we actually want our family, to look like? And just, yeah, there's just so many more possibilities and so much more that's available if we can get families to like think about that and think about what's actually possible and like maybe raise their heads up a little bit from, like I was talking with a young guy at the gym the other day and he's like, man, I'm definitely not going to go to college. I hate school, but I don't know what to do, but man, I'm a hard worker. I'm driven. And I was like, and talk with him. He's like, I'm pretty handy. Like, but I was like, dude, go into one of the trades. He was like, really? I was like, dude, try to get anyone to show up at your house that's reliable and will come. Like, I don't care if it's HVAC. I don't care if it's plumbing. I don't care if it's electrical. I don't care. And like, dude, you could go write your own ticket. And I could tell this kid was like, whoa, like I'd never even considered. And I'm like, go be an apprenticeship somewhere, find one of the trades you like, and then start your own company. And you would literally, if you're dependable and reliable, you'll clean up. Like so I just,
totally.
Kids just thinks like, well, I got to go to college or I got to go get a dead end job that's a means to an end somewhere. And so I love something like Praxis. I would even say if I had a kid who was like, I think I want to go to college, I think my encouragement would be like, well, hey, go through this Praxis program first, go actually get some experience somewhere. You still may end up going to college, but you'll go into college with a much more clear focus of why you're going.
Yep.
Or you might at the end be like, oh yeah, I don't need to go to college, but like, yeah. So I love things like Praxis and I love the kids markets.
Well, my challenge, Chris, is that information is abundant and free. Like we live in an age where
Totally.
nearly everything that you want to go to college to learn, you can just learn like in an afternoon or, in the comfort of your own home. And so what are you buying? Well, historically, you were buying a signal. A college degree was a signal. The noise was all of these applicants for jobs who didn't have college degrees, where employers didn't know if they were going to be a good employee. And the college degree became the signal. I am a competent individual. I pursued this difficult thing, this challenging university thing. And so decades ago, the college degree was the signal, but then the government got involved and said, oh, everyone, we need at K to 12, the purpose of K to 12 schools is to now get kids college and career ready. And everyone needs to go to college and we're going to subsidize college and we're going to have all these state universities that, are offering low cost or no pay options for these kids. Suddenly the college degree, when everyone is being pushed into getting one, becomes the noise. You talk to employers now, right? Most employers are like, a college degree doesn't mean anything to us. We want to see a portfolio. We want to see a work product. We want to see work experience. We want to see like a demonstration that you know how, to produce something. And so that's like in Praxis, the whole goal is to launch them with a little portfolio because they're not going to have a degree, but that's fine because like if you can just show an employer, like, Isaac in the Skip College book, he shared this example where I'm trying to remember off the cuff, but it was this kid who wanted to work at this company. So he subscribes to their email newsletter. He wanted to do like marketing and social media. He subscribes to their newsletter. He follows them on social. 2 weeks later, he sends an email to the director of marketing and says, hey, I love what you guys are doing. I want to work with you. I've done this 4-page audit of your social media. Here's where I think that there's some holes. Here's a Dropbox where I've created a bunch of graphics and videos that you're welcome to use. No attribution, no whatever. Feel free to use them. And if you're interested, I'd be happy to make more of these for you. Now imagine you're a director of marketing and you get this impromptu email of like high quality, like good, it's not crap, but like you find this young person who's got energy and ambition and standing out amongst all the entry level, noise out there. that becomes a huge signal, right? Employers are very interested when they get people reaching out like that. So that's what we're training our kids to do at Praxis is like, if you want to succeed in the future, you've got to be the signal. There's a lot of noise out there in the marketplace, whether you have a degree or not. Don't be the noise. Figure out how you can create a signal to that employer that you're going to create value for them.
It's amazing. Well, I know we're about at time. I did want to ask Connor, how many children do you have?
I've got 2 kids. They're 16 and 14. So we're in the teen years right now.
That's awesome. So one of the questions we love asking guests who come on who have families, in the spirit of like the Boyack family brand, if you will, what would you want your family to be known for?
Mm. That's a great question. My mom, if you knew my mom, you would know that I am an apple that has not fallen far from its tree. My mom is an author of many books. She's a public speaker. She's a community kind of activist, political, whatever. She was on our city council for a decade. In a lot of ways, I am like my mom, and I was inspired by her to, I think it's an apocryphal quote. I don't think Gandhi actually said it, but you've heard the quote, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And so I've kind of inherited that, and I feel like that's what I want for, not, I don't feel, I know that that is what I want for my children, where a Boyack is someone who solves problems for others. My entire career has been now built around seeing opportunities to help other people, whether politically or economically or educationally or whatever, and creating products or legal services or whatever to help them. And admittedly, I like the dopamine hit that I get when I, solve problems and I help other people. But that's my personal brand, and that's the family brand that I am trying to develop, is that when there's people in need, and if we have a way to help, we step forward and do that. My mom wrote a book called Standing Up in a Sit-Down World. And to me, that's a little visual of what we're trying to build is, look, we live in a world of passivity and apathy and disengagement and victimhood, right? It's a sit down world, but we stand up when there's a need, when there's a problem. Boyacks stand up. So that's the family brand that I'd say we're trying to develop.
Boyack, stand up, show up, and solve problems.
I love it. Put it on the business card.
Amazing, man. Well, dude, thank you. This is incredible. Like the amount of things you've accomplished is inspiring. Again, you can go to kidsmarkets.com, tuttletwins.com. And then I also know you were really kind and generous to offer a really cool resource to,
Yeah, we talked about this before we hit record. As Connor said, or as Chris said, Connor, so many amazing resources. The books, the markets, you can check all that out. We'll link everything in the show notes. And then you also, Connor had questions for families around the dinner table. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
We call these dinner conversation starters. They're just simple questions to trigger a lot of follow-on questions to engage your kids in becoming value creators and problem solvers. What's a question that you can ask a 7-year-old or an 11 or a 21-year-old? And so we have different buckets of age-appropriate questions just to foster that conversation around the table. Again, parents are well-meaning, they're well-intentioned, they would love to be having more productive conversations with their kids, but it's hard. You come home from a long day of work and blah, 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 right? And so these are just meant to foster and facilitate conversation in your family. So I think you're going to put the link in the show notes where families can get that free PDF if they're interested in having that support.
Awesome. Thank you. I loved this episode talking with you today. And I can't wait to go further in everything that you offer families.
Yeah. Thank you for taking the time, and just thanks for, not just the work you do for families, but it's inspiring to me, I know, and to us to be like, man, because of, seeing people like you and it's like, man, we feel more called to make a difference for more families. So thanks for coming on and for all the work you do, man.
I wouldn't have it any other way. Thanks to you both for what you're doing for families. Again, I feel like that's where we save our country and save the world. And so to everyone listening, if Chris and Melissa can serve you or we can serve you, I think it's all about the family, and would love to just support you guys in any way we can.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. So that is it for today's episode of the Family Brand Podcast.
But before you go, we have something fun for you.
Yeah. Like if you've ever wondered, okay, so how's our family culture actually doing? We've got an incredible quiz for that.
Good news, it's quick, it's free, and when you're done with that quiz, we'll even email you this awesome PDF full of practical ways to strengthen your family culture right away.
So all you have to do is go to familybrand.com/quiz, take the quiz, grab the PDF.
We'll see you next time.